I don't know. This opening is like listening to Richard Strauss or a Wagner freaking prelude or something. But the music is not evocative. So she put herself in a the opening of the yeah, it feels boring. It's all right, but it's not as good as the House of Dragon one. So she's in a predicament, and we're supposed to believe she can swim all the way back because she's freaking super powerful. So why do we know it's Gandalf? Because we know Gandalf came over from Valinor. He's a Maiar. You got the Valar and you got the Maiar. The Maiar are like lesser versions of the Valar. So like lesser gods or nymphs to try to equate it with Greek mythology. And his original name was Olorin, and he was a devotee of Nyena, which of course we don't talk about the Valar that much in the show so far, but she's kind of like the Lady of the Lake. She's kind of like the goddess that weeps for mankind's mistakes. I forget what else she was. I'll look it up. But basically, he followed her, and him and the other end up getting called Istari, the wizards. They all come from Valinor with the mission of helping direct mankind to help defeat what we know is going to happen with Sauron. And it happened in the Second Age. So this is accurate in terms of this is the time. I forget when exactly. I'd have to look at the timeline. Istari. Yes, they're called Istari. But essentially, they got sent over after the Morgoth was already trapped. Yeah, it's way before. They've been around for a long time. Because they were supposed to help with directing things towards the capture of Sauron. In any case, he doesn't come over as a meteor. I do like the concept, but it is taking liberty. He would have come on a ship. If you're going to follow the lore, just like the elves go on ship back and forth, they could still. Only elven ships at this point can go back and forth between Valinor and Lindon. So that would have been more accurate to do it that way. I don't hate this approach though. He's not an elf, he's a Maiar. So Valinor is populated by Valar, who are the Archons. If we're gonna go more accurate, they're like Archons, like in the Genshin Impact sense. And then like their helpers, like Ganyu isn't an Archon, but she helps the Archon, right? Well, no, she helps the Chising, but we could say like the next level down from the Archons. That's what he is. He serves the Archons. And the Archons are telling him that he needs to come back over here to help the situation. An Adepti, there you go. Okay, Adepti. He's like an Adepti. Yes. That's a good example. And now we know why she's here, because she's going to help him out, because here's what I don't like. They make him out to be retarded. Like, I kind of get it. Like, he doesn't know how to speak a language. He doesn't know how to relate to people in this world. He's kind of thrown into it. I like that concept. But come on, he's not an idiot, you know? Her face is too much. Why what? That was cool. She, what? Did he absorb the fire? I guess? It doesn't make sense. He didn't absorb it because it went back out. Yeah, let's help the alien. Right. And then he eventually gets the ring called Narya, which is the ring of fire. But that's the ring. That's not him. So I don't.
It's got to be. It's not such our fault.
Like the cart starts falling back.
Too long, a wheel gets to
It's so bad. That's so bad. It's like a bum. He just looks like this awful giant bum with no clothes. He looks like, you know, like nobody would help this guy. That's also not how he would land. Yes, he fell from the sky.
Written. It's like there's a reason this happened. Like, I was supposed to find it. Me.
So
I
she's
can't walk away from
she
those
can
things.
she can come across as either delusional or as if she really feels like a connection to this creature. You know, I want to say I bought into it, but that's because I love Gandalf. Basically, they find that the entire village got torched, everyone's dead, and I think he finds like an underground passage that he goes through, and he tells her to tell everybody at the other village, hey, there's this evil coming, beware, get out. This scene is worthless. They're basically talking about Celebrimbor wants to feel like he's gonna do something amazing in his life and he hasn't done it, and the answer is these rings. No, Eregion is a city of elves by the mountains bordering Middle Earth. Excuse me, bordering the eastern part of the mountains. Near Moria, not too far from Moria, where the dwarves are. Khazad-dûm. And this is where in the Second Age the elven smiths were populated and made their rings. This is where the rings are made, essentially. That's really what we care about. Fun fact, Galadriel is supposed to be here at this time with her husband and daughter. And then she leaves Eregion to go over the mountains and go to Lothlorien, where she ends up staying for the rest of her freaking life. Yeah, that's what this is.
Two.
She's supposed to be married. She's supposed to be married with a daughter.
How one object could be responsible
Yes.
for creating so much.
I had to look at the timeline because it was just I couldn't believe it. This is the closest they come to talking about the First Age. That hammer looks really modeled after the video game Shadow of War.
Feanor's work nearly turned the heart of the great foe himself.
I can't enjoy this. This is awful.
What?
This is okay, and this is gonna be messed up because this would never happen.
A glimpse.
But then what he's gonna suggest is even worse.
Cannot provide one, so so will you instead.
That's like a diss.
Have you considered the confines outside the confines of our own race?
This would have never been suggested. It just never would have. The elves would have never asked the dwarves for help in crafting anything, nor did they really admire that of them, as far as I can tell. There is no such thing as Prince Durin. And I was wrong about Gandalf. He's not even in the Second Age. He doesn't even show up until 1,000 years into the Third Age with the other Istari, which makes sense because they're there to help against Sauron, which in the Second Age you still had enough elves and Numenorians to be able to. So there's no reason for them to make a furnace. No, so first of all, there's no reason. Yeah, he's not there. There's no reason for them not to have a furnace to do this. I think that's contrived on the part of the creators of the show. They needed an excuse to send them to meet the dwarves, and it's a very lame excuse. They would have had no need of anybody's help. The elves didn't need anybody's help. They could do it all themselves. So the whole concept is just an excuse to introduce the dwarves into this. And the whole reason they even want to do the rings, make the rings at this point, is not because Celebrimbor is an old man who is afraid of not leaving a legacy behind, but because Sauron convinces them that it's going to help them preserve eternity. And the rings do that. So he wasn't completely lying there, but the whole idea is that the rings were going to be under the power of the One Ring that Sauron was going to forge. And the elves were not aware of that until close to the end. So there's a lot of story there, and a lot of intricacies involved in that they're just glossing over here and not even showing us Sauron, because they know that we all want to see who Sauron is. So they want to keep that to the last minute, I guess. I don't know. But them going to the dwarves and that there would be a friendship between Elrond and any of the dwarves is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I admire all who can see
They
the mystery of things.
They got along with each other to some extent, as long as they didn't interfere with each other.
Could be. Might your friend be able to grant me access to their workshop?
This also feels very Star Wars right now. The way they go up to this door and try to get inside reminds me of like Tatooine. I think at this point they're doing this because they want an excuse. They're having to make excuses to why they're going to introduce characters that don't really coincide with each other very much. The second age is probably the most one of the most interesting ages, but it's also very underdeveloped. It's kind of only developed so that we can get to the third age. It's kind of a segue between the first and the third age. And although there's a lot of important things that happen there isn't a whole lot of story. There's literally 3 major things that happen in the second age: the fall of Numenor, the forging of the rings, and the last battle of the alliance of elves and men against Sauron. That's pretty much it. You can't make a whole series out of that, so they gotta make up some stuff.
My apologies.
But they can make up stuff that goes within the lore.
Durin that his friend, Elrond.
Here we're supposed to pretend that Elrond and Durin have a friendship, and that's how he's gonna try to get in here.
I invoke the right of Sigyn Tavag. What?
I don't know enough of Dwarvish lore to know if that's even a real thing or if that's something they made up. I don't know. It's almost irrelevant. No, they don't have a friendship. Elves and dwarves tolerated each other. They never were close. That's why it's such a big deal in Lord of the Rings that Legolas and Gimli become friends, because it's supposed to be the most weirdest thing that's ever happened, that an elf and a dwarf would become such good friends, because that's never happened before. And all of this technically happens before that, so there would be no such thing as a good friendship between a dwarf and an elf. I don't hate the music. I don't know why they would have waterfalls. That's not like a dwarf thing, so. That is so cringe right there. Khazad Dûm is not something that dwarves yell out. That's the name of the mines. They don't chant it like that. It's so cringe. That's not how it goes. Moria and Khazad Dûm is the same thing. Khazad Dûm is the name in Dwarvish, and I believe Moria is the name in Elvish.
The dwarven test.
And basically he shuts him down, won't let him talk, and is like, we're gonna do this test of endurance and you're gonna lose and then you're gonna get the hell out of here. And we don't know why he's upset until another very cringe moment. What the hell? The whole thing is that the whole thing about dwarf women, because they're dwarves. Remember, they're like golems. Remember? They're not like human. It's not clear that they procreate or that they're very lusty. And you're also almost not supposed to tell the difference between a dwarf woman and a dwarf man. Hence the beards. Like, not just the beards, but like they're like men. They're like strong and sturdy and not very attractive. So you're supposed to not even be able to tell the difference. So really everybody should have a beard, and you really shouldn't be able to tell the difference. It should be like it all look like the same thing. Yes, they're golems. Remember, they're not average beings. That they were almost an accident. They weren't supposed to be born. The Valar Aule created them, unbeknownst to Ilúvatar. So they have their own little history and it's very intriguing, but it's also just kind of like they're not normal. They don't. That's why the whole concept even of a dwarf falling in love with anything is a joke. Yes, they weren't supposed to be born. We can go into the lore more later, but again, as a fantasy story, the little girl that finds a mysterious being and wants to help it, that's kind of cute. You know what I mean? That's okay. And the fact that he would crash land in Middle Earth on a meteor and not know who he was, it just seems really odd. And then we have this really weird thing where he's doing magic with stones, and they try to make it look like he did some kind of black magic where he ruins this guy's foot. Watch this. This is so weird. And somehow they try to correlate it. They try to correlate it with the stone, what he's doing, and then his. That's so. What the hell just happened? Because are they normally that's kind of black magic where you make a figure, a wooden figure of the person you're trying to curse, and then if you break something on that figure, it supposedly hurts the person. I don't know, but that's not what he's trying to do, so I don't know why that correlation happens. It's kind of creepy. And it doesn't make sense. Poor Gandalf. He's been downgraded to a barbarian Neanderthal. As far as the story is concerned, this is a big deal because the Harfoots are about to go on a migration, which they do, I guess, every season. And whoever doesn't make it basically dies because they don't help each other because they're a-holes. It makes no sense, but they don't help each other. They're like, if you fall behind, then you just get written in a book, and then we say your name. I only know this because I watched the other episodes, and I was just like, Jesus, you guys are awful people. And these people, they're like those typical nosy gossip mongers. They're so annoying.
Weight of a leaf on that leg, much less bullet.
Anyway, back to Galadriel, lost in the water. We're supposed to believe she can swim through the entire ocean with these people that are all obnoxious and they don't want her to get on, then they want her to get on. The only reason that this is important in the story of the show, not the real book, obviously,
I'm not leaving her to it.
is because she's gonna meet Halbrand, this guy. He's nobody. He doesn't exist. He's not part of the real book because he's from the Southlands in this show. And there is no history of the Southlands to be mentioned in all of the writings because the Southlands is only really important in terms of the fact that they supported Morgoth and Sauron in the battles. So they're comprised mostly of people that are not in the best quality, I guess. However, they're trying to make that a little different here, which is fine. It's believable. But he doesn't exist. He's not a real person. He never existed. But he's very important to this story as they have put it together. And you won't really get to know that until the next episode. He grows on you like Elrond does because the actor's okay. She threw her off. Did you like how she was the one that was like, let's bring her on, and then the first one to throw her off. I love it. Do you hate her outfit as much as me? She's literally like wearing a bed sheet. How do you even swim in that? Okay, this is cool. That's pretty awesome. We stand that. There's a lot of filler in this show. Not a lot of content. Unlike House of Dragon, let's say. Yeah, so it just magically disappears. I guess it ate enough people, so it's full now. And of course, the only survivor, of course, it's Halbrand.
back at the moon. But you cannot bring it down.
Can we say that the euphemisms on this show are so cringe also? They're so bad. You can bark at the moon, but you can't bring it down.
You missed my wedding. The birth of my children. You cannot barge into my mountain and demand I welcome you with open arms.
Did he literally just say that he's upset his elf buddy wasn't there for his wedding and the birth of his children? Oh my god, like Tolkien would fucking, he would die. He would die. He's like a little girl. They just turned the dwarf leader into a little bitch that's crying because this, and even look at his face. He's like, what? He's like, what? Are you literally crying because I wasn't there for your wedding? Why didn't you give me an invitation to your wedding then, you dumb? He's about to cry.
Life in that time.
Actually, no. Dwarves live pretty long too, buddy. Did you forget? Did we all forget that dwarves live pretty long? They may not live forever like elves, but they live a long freaking time. 20 years would not have been that much. Shoot, man. I don't know how long they live. They gotta live at least several hundred years. I'd have to look at the, I'd have to look at the reference stuff and tell you, but they live several hundreds of years, so it's not like 20 years is a lot. I don't think they even come of age until they're like 60, so it doesn't even make sense. This was awful. This was terrible. It should have been something like, you stole this, I gave you this trinket, or you stole this helmet that we made that belonged to my dad and you took it. How dare you take it? I'm gonna kill you over it. That's what a dwarf would have done. He would not have gotten upset about him not being there for the wedding because they're not that close. So now he goes to his house. He convinces him to go to the house for dinner. Actually, not staying for dinner, but then the wife shows up and then the wife is like, you're staying for dinner, and is trying to be cutesy, and it's just...
No staying for dinner.
It's not cute. We get to the dinner. There's a tree there. Supposedly, he put that tree, it was an elf tree, and he put it there because of his friendship with Elrond. So again, he's looking like a little punk. But that would have never happened. I'm sorry. There's never any trees like that in Moria. What?
I'm really confident we were onto a size.
There's no light. How is there light in the frick? They're inside a mountain. Where's the light coming from? Where is the light coming from for this tree that no dwarf would ever plant, nor would they take care of? They're about mining. They're about minerals. Again, the only friendship between dwarf and elf was Gimli and Legolas. Never would have happened. An elf would have never given a sapling from any of the great trees that they had to a dwarf. A dwarf would have never cared about such a thing. A dwarf would have never planted it, nor could it have grown inside Khazad-dûm. There is no light. I don't know where they come up with this concept that there's now a little cavern leading up into this outside that gives it light, but that would not have happened. The dwarf sentimentality is very misplaced here. He would not have given a damn whether this guy came to his wedding or not. He would have cared more about whether he had stolen any of his jewels or any of his hoard. So this is all out of place. It's cute, almost cringy cute, but it's not realistic. Not to mention that there's no such thing as a Prince Durin that would have been alive at the same time as his father. That's not the way the Durin line goes. And I'm no expert on that respect. So that's all that happens here. Supposedly we're supposed to believe that because of this cute little interchange between them at this dinner with the wife present, suddenly now Durin's heart is softened to this guy, and he's gonna do what previously he wasn't going to do. So silly.
These
The whole thing plays out quite farcically. Then we go back to these two that are smitten with each other. This whole scene is lame. Pretty much a storm comes and they are trying to, it doesn't feel real. They're trying to get information out of each other. There's a lot of banter back and forth that goes nowhere. He won't tell her where he's from until he tells her that he's from the Southlands. There's the insinuation that he's a king. It's very poorly played out. Not to mention her outfit is awful. There's no way that that thing would not be soaked in water and just fall right off of her. Same look always with her. Keep in mind, she's supposed to be married with a daughter at this point. And in Eregion or Lothlorien, nowhere near this, whatever they're supposed to be. But that had to happen because they needed to be, you'll see why, I guess. I don't want to spoil it just yet. But that had to happen for the next part of this contrived message to happen. Defensive, yeah. Very defensive. We'll go back to this storyline where this lady suddenly can kick butt. The best part about this whole thing is, again, this kid, anger issue problems much. The elf, he gets kidnapped. We don't, it's not really, there's nothing much going on with him until after this, to be honest. It's after this where we find out where he got kidnapped to that it actually gets a little more interesting for him. Even though this entire storyline also doesn't make any sense, nor does it play out. But this scene is trying to be cinematic. And I like him. I like the actor. I like how he plays it. He plays him like a Vulcan, which is out of place. But I think it's the closest to an elf we are seeing in the entire show. And she goes... This is the Peter Jackson problem. Peter Jackson turned Lord of the Rings into a horror movie. Because he's a horror movie director. He started in horror movies with, what's her name? Shoot, I forgot her name already. The girl from Titanic, if you ever watched Titanic. And I forgot her name. I'm blanking out. This happens to me. I can't keep all these names anymore in my head. And he's a horror movie guy. And he weaseled his way into doing fantasy. No, it's not Cate Blanchett. I know. I wanted to say Cate Blanchett. It's not. It's not Cate Blanchett. It's the other one. She had a moment and now she's gone now. She had her moment in the sun. He made it into a horror movie. That's why the orcs are so well done and the elves are so stale and boring and serious, which really wasn't the thing with elves. It's not in Lord of the Rings that way. And if anything, the Silmarillion is, but the Silmarillion is trying to be a saga, so it's not a horror movie. It has moments of horror, sure, but the part where she slams her. Boom! She would be not getting up. Like, nobody would get up from that. And I get that it's, fantasy, but come on, man. You can almost believe like a strong warrior type guy getting up from that and fighting back, but not this little whimsic. Yeah. And then the son got slashed across the chest. Anyway, and then the best part of the whole thing, it's almost as cringe as the first episode where she chops his head off. But they won't even show it to us because they probably tried it so many times that it looked terrible. So they cut to her slamming it. Like, that was so unbelievable that they probably had to cut it and cut to this because it just was not believable. Could you imagine the strength it takes to chop somebody's head off? Cut the neck completely off of the spine? Especially on a monster? Yeah, so... I think he's looking at her more like, you didn't do that. And who human? That lady is supposed to be human, yes. So even less believable. You could almost believe it if it was an elf. Yeah. And she's not even like a trained fighter or anything like that either. I don't know. More of the femme fatale. And now we go back to Gandalf and Nori, and this whole scene is awkward. He's still trying to tell her, because he can't speak. He's trying to still tell her where he needs to go. It would make sense that he would use constellations, because the Valar are all about the sky. It does make sense in that respect. But here he's using moths to try to make out a constellation in the sky. And then the moths die. And I don't get that. Why would they be dying? Why would there be death associated with him? First, her father has his leg or his ankle broken by him somehow, by this weird magic. It's like he doesn't even know what he's doing with his magic. And now he's using moths from these lamps that they're holding up to write a constellation in the sky, which would think would be cool. And then the moths die. And you're like, why would that be the case? Why are we associating death with Gandalf, who doesn't even come until the next age anyway? It's unclear. But you can see the constellation.
Isn't it?
And then he's out of energy. As if that was so much energy. Then we have a stupid scene with Durin and his father that could never have happened. Why is death a part of their story? I don't know. It doesn't add up. I don't know why they would make death a part of the storyline. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And this guy that was so angry at little Elrond now suddenly decides that he's going to help him out. But the dwarves would have never helped them craft anything. That doesn't add up either. We're back to this thing, which, if it's supposed to be the beginning of a Nazgul, it would have been a ring. I don't know what they're trying to suggest with this. I think that's it. They're leaving. Where they're going to, we don't know. And then they obviously landed somewhere and are picked up by we don't know who. And I think that's where we end. Which this was the whole point of the whole water sequence anyway. Was to get to this. So yeah. Episode 2, more shenanigans.